Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Unstoppable Dad Project. Hope everyone's having a great week. Thanks again for joining us on this podcast. So, this week I just wanted to talk about something that I have received a few questions on, and as it pertains to, I guess, a change in habits, a change in lifestyle, and a change in implementing something that's going to be sustainable. And a lot of people, what they try and do when they're trying to make a change is they try and start with intensity first. And what I mean by that is, and you'll see it out there, I've done it in the past when I've been training people, trying to help them through particular changes, and they'll start off doing like a 28-day challenge, a 6-week challenge, like something where it's a really hard push over a short period of time. And what that leads to, and what I've had many, many conversations over the years with people on, is basically, I did insert X, whatever challenge it is here, and I got amazing results from it, but I wasn't able to maintain and sustain those results that I got. And I've spoken about it a little bit on this podcast. I've spoken about it in our groups that we've got, whether it be with Fusion or it be with the Unstoppable Dad Project. And, the number one thing that we advocate, or I advocate, is consistency, like just building consistency when you first start. And when I've been thinking about this over the last week, and this has come about from a few conversations I've had and a few little things I've seen, and also too, I've been listening to a book. I'm a big audiobook guy and podcast guy, as those of you that have probably listened to this for a while have picked up. But had a book recommended to me in one of the business groups that I'm in, which is called Chop Wood, Carry Water. And in essence, what it's about is doing the boring shit for a sustainable period of time. It's about taking consistent, sustainable habits in order to make massive change in what you want to do. And what I see when it comes to people trying to make a change in their training regime or their health and wellness space is they try and make these short changes in a really extreme way. And for a lot of people, they can do it in that short period of time. But then when it finishes, it's like this, what do I do now? Because the way I've gone about getting whatever particular result you're looking for is not sustainable for me long-term moving forward. Because whatever action you have to take in order to get a particular result, you have to maintain that action in order to sustain that result. So if you've undertaken, say, a 6-week challenge where you've gone into it and you've got these amazing results, however that looks for you, whether it be strength gains, whether it be body composition gains, whatever the result is, but you've done it in a way where in the back of your head as you're doing this with kids and a job, like I've had to sacrifice some things that I'm not 100% happy with sacrificing long term, then that result's not necessarily going to be able to stick around. And with the podcast today, really what I wanted to highlight is short-term intensity can be very valuable at different times in your life. And I think that flicking the switch for some people to really push the boundaries of what they're capable of doing is a really, really important thing to do. But where I think a lot of people come unstuck is doing that when they're first trying to make a massive change in their life, because then they don't understand how to dial it back to a base level, which is going to be sustainable, because they only know one level. And if you're somebody that's been through this yo-yo hamster wheel where it's like I'm constantly getting on and getting off again, and I'm not able to really make anything stick, I would put it to you and I would challenge you to, instead of trying to make an extreme change to begin with in a short period of time, focus on chopping wood and carrying water. So making those small incremental changes, and then when they have stuck, you've been able to maintain them for a 3, 6, or 12-month period, then you can start to add in short-term bouts of intensity. And then what happens is when you add in those short-term bouts of intensity to achieve a particular goal, to train for a particular competition, to achieve what X outcome, then you understand how to get back to a base level rather than getting back to a 0 point that you started at before making that extreme change. And my personal opinion, I used to be of the opinion that to begin with, sometimes you need to go all the way in the deep end and then bring it back. It's like that sink or swim type deal. But I've actually changed due to probably the type of person that I work with. You know, now, whether it's here or whether it's within the gym, it's more those people, late 30s, early 40s, with kids, jobs, businesses, busy lives, who are trying to reclaim a level of strength, health, and athleticism that they've potentially had in the past or they've never been able to achieve in their life. And when you've got all these other factors, like most people who are listening to this, you've got your kids to worry about, you've got your relationships to worry about. So whether that be with your spouse or significant other, or it be with just other important people in your life, then you've got your profession to worry about. And if you switch all the way into that short-term bout of intensity, something's going to have to give. And I've spoken about this on one of my previous podcasts where we talk about the quadrants and the different corners of the square. And as soon as you go out to the extreme on one side, another one has to retract. And that's the same when you're trying to implement it. So what I would talk about, or what I think is really important for a lot of people to understand, is if you start with just trying to create a consistent habit around the thing that you want to change, rather than trying to jump in the deep end and trying to make that extreme change, I think that is going to be a better approach, especially if you are someone who has stop-started a lot of times. So you've tried that stuff, nothing's really stuck, and it's because you're really trying to jump in head first rather than feet first, or just dip your toe in the water and make sure you can actually get in and you can swim. You've got to make sure that whatever you understand what that base level is after you've risen to that higher level of intensity. Because if you've started at 0 and you don't understand that there's a level in between, we spoke last week about the difference between training for health and performance. This is kind of along the same veins of that. And some of the questions that I've got from that last podcast have stemmed into what we're talking about here. But if you start off with intensity and you don't understand how to ratchet that back when the time arises, then it's going to get put into the too hard basket. I've seen it time and time again with the people I've coached. I've also seen it in my life when I've tried to implement something new and not understanding that just taking that consistent action over a longer period of time can potentially get you to the goal that you want anyway. It might not get you there in 6 weeks, but it may actually, and it may take you a little bit longer to get there. But what I find is, if you just start with building consistency first and not trying to make massive radical change, the things that you are implementing are going to be more likely to stick. You are going to be able to add in bouts of short-term intensity because you can ratchet it up for a short period of time and then you can bring it back to that baseline, which means that you can go and achieve different things that maybe you have thought in the past of being completely unachievable. And it just becomes a habit. And then the goal that you're looking to achieve by focusing on that short-term intensity can actually get molded and adapted and potentially progressed because you understand that it's a long game rather than just focusing on getting that immediate result. And all too often, I see so many people in a lot of different aspects, and I've done this. I do it a lot in business. I haven't really, training and health for me, to be fair, has always been something since, I was pretty much 16 years old. That's just been part of my life, and I just kind of do it. It's habit. But for me, knowing what that habit is and knowing where that baseline is and understanding that baseline for the season of my life that I'm in means that when I want to ratchet it up, so I want to, focus more on a strength goal, or maybe I'm training for a jiu-jitsu competition so I can, ratchet up the intensity of the training, but understanding that once that's over, where I need to fall back to, rather than just being like, now this is a whole different game that I'm entering into because I've been so used to operating up here and I don't know how to operate down here, but I do know how to operate at that 0 point. And that tends to be what happens. I see people try and get these massive, massive short-term results, but then they don't understand that there's a middle point from 0 to where they are now, which is that point of sustainability. So if you have always struggled, if you've struggled to maintain consistency, you've found that you're constantly up and down with what you're trying to achieve, what your goals and where your consistency are. What I would recommend is look at just building sustainable habits. Build out a plan that is going to be sustainable in your life. Let's say if it is training, and obviously that's what I've helped people do for many, many years. But if it is training, just focus on getting 3 sessions a week. Just focus on getting those short-term goals, those short-term results. Don't focus on the short-term results. I shouldn't say do focus on them. Focus on the long-term. The short-term results and the tick in the box that you're looking for is something like, did I train 3 times a week? Yes or no? And then by building that over a 6 or 12 month period, whatever the goal is, whether it's looking to rebuild your athleticism, whether it's looking to rebuild a base level of strength or whatever that might be, that will happen because you're just building that consistency. And then once you've built that consistency, if you then want to go into short-term bouts of intensity to achieve a higher level of something, you can do that. You can go into a 6-week strength block and really push for that. You can go into and look at doing a competition and push to do well in that. And then once that's over, once that's completed, you then understand that, all right, I just go back to my consistency piece. It's about keeping those habits sustainable over that long term and then adding in the short-term intensity piece, rather than starting with the short-term intensity and then not understanding where that level of consistency can be. So the book I mentioned before, if you've gotten this far into the podcast, congratulations to you. But the book that I've been reading is Chop Wood, Carry Water. I'd recommend that anyone who's in business or anyone who's interested in, personal development, self-development, listen to it. There are a lot of similar books that I've read along that vein that are all about, just short-term habit. Atomic Habits is another one that I've read, which is kind of a bit of a similar message, but it sometimes just puts into perspective that just building those long-term sustainable habits, rather than just trying to push hard in the short term, is maybe what you need. And especially for those of you that are probably listening to this podcast because you have kids, you are in a stage of your life where you've got a lot of other things that you need to factor in when you're trying to make a change. Those small, incremental, sustainable habits are probably going to be a better fit for you than that short-term, high-intensity push. And to boot, even though it might take you longer to get the result, you'll be able to keep the result. And I would say once you've gotten that result, you'll actually be able to get a better result on the back end because you're going to continue to take consistent action. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for listening. Hope you got some value out of everything I've just gone through. We were having some technical issues with some sound over previous weeks, so hopefully that's been fixed this week. Let me know if it is. And while you're there, jump on, like us on Facebook, The Unstoppable Dad Project, like us on Instagram at The Unstoppable Dad. Jump into our free Facebook group, which is linked to the Facebook page. Subscribe, share these podcasts around. This will be on YouTube as well. I appreciate your time. We'll see you all next week. Bye.